Hello, and welcome to Seniors Count. I'm Greg Jocelyn. On our show, we believe that you are the foundation on which Boston was built, so we connect you to resources, benefits, and information to enrich your life. So thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to introduce Sister Bridget Hasse. She's a sister, celebrated author, and speaker, and she has a persona, Sister Storyteller, who's with us today. She performs for school children with friendly companions to bring joy and resilience into our community. So welcome, Sister, to our
Thank you,
show.
Greg. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. And we've got some extra special guests that will be
yes,
coming.
and I want you to know I told them they'd better behave in the studio.
I know, we've already had to speak to them.
I know
So
it. I know it.
excited about the companions, but before we meet them, I want to meet you a little bit more and find out, first of all, so your sister's storyteller, but where did stories come into your life as a child?
Well, you know, I've always loved stories. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the imagination of it. I don't know if it's discovery. I used to tell Mama and Daddy I was going to go explore. And Mama would say, they called me Duchess, and Mama would say, Duchess, we've lived in this neighborhood. You've lived here your whole life. What is there to explore? And I'd say, I don't know, Mama, but I'm going to find something and I'll tell you the story when I come home. And so it's kind of like I grew up telling stories, loving stories, and finding meaning behind the ordinary things in life. And I think that's what storytelling does.
Finding the ordinary extraordinary.
Exactly. Finding what's extraordinary behind the ordinary in life. And it creates such a sense of wonder and such a sense of awe. And as we age, that wonder and awe becomes wisdom because we know there's more to life than what we see.
That's a very wise statement. So your website is called wisdomwonder.com.
My website is called wisdomwonder.com, and there's a lot of interesting things on it. It's very user-friendly.
It is.
But also on there, I have introduced my companions too, which we'll get to later.
We will.
So they even have their own web page.
They do have their own webpage. I want to trace a little bit more about the adventuring and going out and exploring and seeing the world anew, essentially, because you've lived in so many different places.
I have.
And you've done mission work in these
I
places
have.
and education. Can you tell me more about your...
Well, I've taught in many schools. I'm a primary teacher. So I have taught high school, but my love is children, the primary children, especially when they learn to read. That was always the most exciting point of any day. But I've been in Sudan, in the desert of Sudan during the famine, and fed hundreds of starving children. That was an experience I'll never forget. And I can't forget it because hunger in Africa continues to this day. Mm-hmm. I've been in the hills of Mexico. I've been in the hollers of Appalachia.
You have.
So I've had a very wide experience. And I've also, I forgot, I've also been in Senegal. I was in the bush in West Africa, in Senegal. And I managed blood, sweat, and tears because cultures are different and languages are different. And when I was in Sudan, we had Arabic, Amharic, Tigray, Tigrinian. We had all of these languages and very little English. So it's a challenge.
You also, so you lived in England as well.
Oh yes, I've been a year in England, a year in Italy.
In Italy as well.
And tried to really enter into all the cultures and experience them. And it's just, our world is fascinating. And so many people think, you know, Africa, everything is the same in Africa, but it isn't. Every country is different.
It is.
Every culture is different. Languages are different. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful life.
Learning about you, I see that the theme that I see is empathy.
Yes.
You even talk about when you were in England, you almost wanting a British accent.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, there was a dear sister. She has since died, and her name was Sister Mary Paul.
Okay.
And she came to me one day and she said, with a very British accent, She said she was teaching English to children. And she said, "Sister," she said, "please don't talk to the children because I don't want you to taint their English," because I had an American accent. And so they were always trying to teach me to get that American accent gone so that I could get that British accent. And I used to think, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could speak with a British accent?
And
Yeah.
so you also came to Boston.
I did.
And so speaking of accents,
Oh,
we
I
know
know.
about Boston accents, but can you tell me more about your work here locally?
Well, my work here, for several years, I was at the Learning Center at St. Brendan's on Gallivan Boulevard in Dorchester. And I decided one day that I didn't want the children to be branded who came to the Learning Center, so that everybody would know they needed extra help. So then I would bring the exceptional children, or those that were really very advanced. So nobody knew who was who. They just knew they were going to the Learning Center. And so I had advanced courses for the grades 1 through 3, and then I had those that needed extra help. But I always like to give something to the neighborhood, you know? So I went to the Carney Hospital and asked if they had any extra volunteers, and they said, "No, we're filled for the moment. But if you go down 3 blocks, there's the Boston Home, and they need volunteers." And I walked in, and that is a wonderful facility on the corner of Gallivan and Dot Ave. And they have 96 younger adults who are all paralyzed with multiple sclerosis and other degenerative neurological diseases. So for 14 years, I was spirituality coordinator and tried to keep in contact with St. Brendan's. So I reduced. I was at St. Brendan's with volunteer work at the Boston Home. Then I went to the Boston Home and did volunteer work at St. Brendan's. So that was for 14 years. And then one day, shall I tell you how I started Sister Storyteller?
Yes, we've been waiting. We've been waiting.
And then one day, I decided that I'm in the autumn of life, and it's wonderful because the autumn of life, the trees are beautiful, but the leaves are falling, you know, and winter's going to come. And I didn't want to be a whiner on my deathbed. I didn't want to be saying, "Oh, there was something I really wanted to do, God, and I didn't get to do it." And God's going to say, "You know what, Bridget? You had time, and you just didn't do it." So I said to myself, what do I really want to do before I die? And I said, I really want to go back to children, because over 30 years I had been mostly primary. But I said, how am I going to do this? And Greg, I'm telling you, one day I was washing dishes in the convent kitchen, and all of a sudden I saw it. Sister Storyteller. I love being eccentric, so I would be eccentric. I'd get an outfit, I'd put on a hat, I'd get companions, I'd give them bios, and I would go, and I would never read a story, but I would go to 3- and 4-year-olds in preschools and tell stories and get them to interact, so that I would be doing in the autumn of my life what I loved to do as a child, explore and tell stories.
What a journey it is. I mean, and it's so connected.
It's so connected to compassion, because I truly believe that if we knew each other's story, as we were talking earlier, this would be a world of such compassion. When I learned the stories of our residents at the Boston Home struggling with MS and other degenerative diseases, I just saw them in a completely different light. The compassion that comes forth when you know what somebody has gone through. And that's why, as I was saying to you, we always say to people, well, how are you? And, oh, I'm fine. But if we stopped and said, you know, I'm fine, but how are you? How are you doing today? I'd love to say, could you tell me your story today? But I know that wouldn't work with strangers. But I think if we knew that, if we stopped, we looked at the person and we listened, we would have a world of compassion.
And speaking of compassion, can I'm curious to hear more of the stories of our friends
Oh,
who are here.
yes.
So who do you think wants to come out first?
Well, I think he's so shy, but I'm going to, will you come
okay,
out?
Okay.
Oh, please. Okay. Oh, I have trouble with legs. Because
Legs.
this is legs. And his legs are long, as you see.
They are. He's very tall.
Yes, but it's wonderful when you're at a parade.
That is very true. I sort of want to be on his shoulders.
So he can see, but he's very shy, and sometimes it's hard to get him to talk.
I can
But
see that.
he loves, his grandmother, you know, is Spanish. She's Hispanic, actually. And he loves to dress like a Spanish cowboy, like a gaucho. And his mama's teaching him how to make tortillas. But he has a wonderful, wonderful relationship with his grandmother. And he calls her abuelita, which is Spanish for grandma. Now, he visited St. Brendan's preschool. And there was a little girl in there who was so excited because she said that her grandma's name, she said, I don't know how to say it, but it's the same name that Legs has for his grandma. So right away there was a connection. And I said, aren't you lucky? I said, you have your abuelita, and Legs has his abuelita. He also loves to walk the beaches.
I can see it. I can imagine.
And he loves to read. And his mom and dad are kind of encouraging to talk a little bit more, right? Yeah. And sometimes we have to sing a song to him. It's okay to be shy. And actually, Greg, if you want to know the truth, in the preschool, I asked the children, the 22 4-year-olds, if there was anybody in here. I said, is there anybody in here who's shy like Legs? You know what happened? All hands went up.
You're kidding. Wow.
They all wanted to be like Legs. And they all wanted to be a Spanish cowboy.
Wow. You really opened it up for kids.
Yes, you open it up.
And Legs actually can open it up.
And then
for
he
kids.
has a twin sister. Where shall I put him?
Oh, Legs can come right over here.
Okay.
So, okay.
And his twin sister is Leggett.
Leggett.
Now
Oh, wow. Hi, Leggett. Wow.
This is Leggett. And it's interesting because she's learning French in school. So she will say bonjour, ça va? But he'll always say hola, ¿qué tal? Because his grandma's teaching him Spanish.
Right.
So they talk to each other. He speaks Spanish, she speaks French. She also has long legs. They were born same day, same mama, same daddy in the hospital. And she talks all the time, don't you? Listen.
Very talkative.
Now, shh. She's very talkative. She's a little chatterbox, and her daddy says, you know what, you've got to think before you speak. She loves to dance, loves to play soccer, but she also paints flowers. Aren't you? Yeah, she's a very good artist, and she's very good to her brother. They do everything together. And she is practicing double Dutch, jump rope with her friend Honeysuckle, because the school's having a contest. And the winners get to shop with their parents for the food pantry. And so Leggett and Honeysuckle, I'll introduce you to Honeysuckle,
Okay, thank you.
want to win this contest.
Okay. Perfect.
This is their neighbor. She is the sweetest. This is Honeysuckle.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Wow.
Honeysuckle has long legs too, but
She
she's
does.
a little bit bigger. And she lives,
Oh, no,
whoops.
Honeysuckle can have
That's
some
right.
water.
Yes, exactly. She lives about 2 doors down from Legs and Leggett. And her favorite thing, she's many favorite things, but her favorite thing, every July she goes for 2 weeks on her daddy's houseboat. Her uncle's houseboat.
okay.
The whole family goes on the houseboat. And she and Leggett are practicing double Dutch, aren't you? Yeah, because they want to win this contest. But I'll tell you, she's tops in her class in math and geography. She has a secret. She wants to be a space explorer. And every night she looks at the stars, don't you? And she makes these projects. She makes these wonderful scrapbooks of interesting inventions. And right now she's working on one. 100 years ago, they invented traffic lights, and she's working, aren't you? Yep, she's working on traffic lights. So these are my 3 companions.
And what is so wonderful, I mean, just imagining them, working or meeting some of the kids that, in Boston that you're working with, what's fascinating is that any kid could feel connected to any one of these personas or types of personalities.
That's right.
I mean, there are people who are more science-minded, there are people who are more artistic, people who are quiet, people who are talkative.
And because, Greg, let me just tell you, and of course Honeysuckle knows this because I told her the story, when I asked if there was anybody in the preschool, remember now they all had said they were shy like Legs. Everybody raised their hand. But when I told them that Leggett was a chatterbox and she was talking all the time, I said, is there anybody in here who's a chatterbox and talks all the time? And what do you think happened? All the hands went up.
All the hands went up.
Yes. So it didn't matter if you were quiet or you were a chatterbox. You were with Legs and Leggett.
You felt connected to them regardless. So I want to thank them for coming today, and you're off the hook now.
They better behave. Yes, indeed. Let's put them here.
Okay. And one of the things that I wanted to hear more about, because it's such a fascinating, speaking of stories, is their history. History and the background.
Their background. I have a dear friend who's 83 years old. Her name is Trudy. And Trudy is German, and she was born in Germany. She married a serviceman, came over years ago, and learned English by reading magazines, raised 4 children as a single parent in the later years of their marriage. And when she was a child, she and her family hid in the forest in Germany. She called it a forest, might have been the woods, because they didn't want the boys in the family to be conscripted, is that the word, conscripted to Hitler's army.
Absolutely.
So they hid. And her mother noticed that the farmers in the area, the little girls had no toys because the farmers were all worried trying to raise food for eating. So Trudy and her mom collected scraps, and her mom taught her how to make dolls. And so they made dolls from scrap, and they would pass them out to the different farms. That's the story she told me. So she was delighted when I said, Trudy, would you imagine Legs and Leggett, and would you create them for me? And she did it all on her own. She put them all together. She gave them personalities. And she said, she said, I'm going to give them a little red hair because people with red hair have spunk.
They do have some people with red hair, do. You're absolutely right.
So she created Legs and Leggett.
It's such a gift to these kids. I mean, this is something that you're doing for free. This is something that
absolutely. I do it for free. There's no cost because I'm doing it for fun. I'm doing it because, as I say, the leaves are falling, but the leaves are going to fall dancing. They're not going to just plop from the tree. So my tree, their leaves are dancing, and I'm having fun. So there's no cost. But I do say to people say, well, there must be some. So I say, well, if you'd like to give to a charity, that would be wonderful. So I have a list of about 7 charities that go from cancer research to children. And I say, there's no obligation. But these are as I said, these are the charities, these are the names. So if you'd like to send a check, please do. And just tell them it's from Sister Storyteller.
And so kids, how can, I don't know, beyond kids, I mean, how can we meet Sister Storyteller?
Well, I'm reserved for 3- and 4-year-olds.
Right. So we won't be seeing Sister anywhere.
And also, I've had a little struggle myself with cancer, so I've promised my oncologist that I would not appear dressed in this outfit in their reception room. And, but I think we all have to think of not so much, like I'm getting old, I can't do anything, death is at my door. None of that. We have to look at life and say it's wonderful. is there one more thing I'd like to do? And really, this has taken me 4 years. So it's not something you do overnight.
Absolutely.
It takes time. But when I come to die, I'm just going to say it's a wonderful life and I've done everything you've asked me to do, because there's been some hard things, and I've done everything I've wanted to do. And then I'm just going to wink, I think, at God and say, and Sister Storyteller was the best. I saved the best till last.
Save the best for last. Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of that classic Edith Piaf song, No Regrets.
No regrets, that's right.
And that is such a powerful, line.
Exactly. And why would you spend your autumn leaves in your autumn years in bitterness? Because there's nothing to that. We need to spend it in wonder and awe. And I think that's why I love children. Absolutely. Because when that little girl said to me, "That's my grandma's name, Abuelita," and there was mutual admiration, 22 4-year-olds, mutual admiration. They were looking at Leggett and honeysuckle and just couldn't believe it. And I thought to myself, this is the future. This is hope. This is wisdom. This is wonder. And it was such a blessing for me, yeah.
I want to thank you, Sister, for coming today. It's been a pleasure to meet you and all of the lovely companions.
Thank you.
So best of luck with your storytelling journey.
Thank you so much.
We will hopefully see you soon.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
And thank you for joining us on Seniors Count. The show is brought to you by Mayor Martin J. Walsh and our Commissioner, Emily Shea. To contact us, please call 617-635-4366. You can also call the Mayor's 24-hour hotline, 617-635-4500. You can email us at elderly@boston.gov. And of course, you can find us on Facebook for more Seniors Count clips and also clips from our radio show, Seniors Count, as well. So we hope you take care and have a beautiful day with lots of wisdom and inspiration.
What a wonderful world.